And after some minor technical difficulties, we are back. I am joined here again with Paul. Hopefully, he's not going to get randomly kicked this time. At the end of part one, I was asking you, Paul, what minute marker Littlefinger was going to come in and save the day. During our little fiasco, did you have time to think about that?
Yeah, so 55-minute episode. Assume that the battle starts like around minute 40 or so. I will say minute 49 for him to come in. I think it's going to be pretty late and that it's not actually going to be that much scene once he joins. Like most will have occurred before that.
I agree, mostly because that's how George writes his war battles. Battle of Blackwater Bay looked like Stannis was going to breach, and then the Tyrells swooped in.
Right.
Battle against the Wildlands looked like the Wildlands going to breach, and then Stannis swooped in. So it's kind of George's writing style, and I'm just expecting it at this point. I agree with 49 minutes. I will push it back a little bit to 51 just to make things a little more interesting. But yeah. Anything else about the war in the North before we move on to the last couple of things?
No, that's about it. I mean, we didn't see the Boltons this episode, but I assume that they're just chilling in Winterfell.
Ooh, another good question. Does Rickon live through this season?
I'm going to lean no. I mean, Ramsay is ruthless, and I don't see him letting Rickon outlive him, even if they're losing.
Yeah, I'd say it's about 95% that Rickon's a goner at this point, which sucks because we didn't see him for like 2 seasons. So, yeah, I'll miss him, but he was a very non-important character.
No, he was the only Stark I didn't really like because he was just too young for me to care about, really.
Right, and we had zero attachment to him as a book reader because the only 2 Starks that didn't have POV chapters were him and Robb. So,
yeah.
Okay, so moving on from War in the North, wanted to touch on. That was the thing I was going to revert back to. The Riverlands.
Yes.
We completely forgot about the Riverlands when we were making the outline earlier.
Right.
What do you think about Jaime's entrance and the little parlay that he had with the Blackfish and what that might be setting up?
Well, I think a big thing is also you have to factor in the next on thing they showed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Factors into that as well, with Brienne talking to Jaime and basically saying she's going to go into the castle, but that if she goes in, and can't convince him to give way, that she's going to have to join him.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that it is. I don't know. I think that it was important that the relevant personalities meet face to face and interact before because this isn't going to be an on the field type of battle. It's going to be a siege, and they're going to spend a lot of time across the walls from each other, and there's going to be more diplomacy and things of that nature. Right. And so I think it's just setting the stage for a series of interactions between the two of them, possibly aided by Brienne.
Yeah, and I like both of those characters a lot. I like both of the actors that play those characters a lot as well. And I'm really interested to see what Brienne brings to the table, if it's more animosity or if there's going to be peace in the Riverlands once more. However, the title of the 4th book of George R.R. Martin's series will tell you that peace is probably not going to happen, and it's going to be another feast for crows. I don't really think we have to touch much more on the Riverlands, except I'm excited to see Bronn back in action.
Yeah, Bronn back was nice. The one thing I will say is that I think Brienne is going to be very miscast as a diplomat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Brienne should never be a diplomat in any... She's way too hostile.
Well, and just decision-making and things like that are not her chief skills. She is a brute on the battlefield who wants to take orders.
Yeah. So, I guess the only thing that I'm looking forward to is more Bronn jokes. And apparently he's a siege master now, so I'm curious to see what he does with the siege on what's the castle called?
Oh my god. I don't remember.
We're gonna look it up.
But no, I'm excited for more Braun and more Blackfish because he's one of those like every time he comes up in the books, it's like he's got a great personality. People seem to like him, etc. And so I'm just excited to see that character kind of fleshed out a little bit more in the show.
Absolutely, yeah. He, yeah, he was a great character for the book series, and then even in like Rob's King in the North time,
Right.
it was just extremely interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I'm looking here. It is. Where are you? Come on.
Also, I do think that the phrase "pride" was really funny. That like Jamie freaking Lannister shows up and they're trying to talk back to him and saying they're still in charge.
Right. He could have just had, a couple of his knights behind him, shoot him in the back of the head with a crossbow. Like,
Right.
okay, where is this?
Well, it's like you think about it, like
Oh, there
yeah,
it is. River Run.
it's just called River Run.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not that that was the name of like their whole territory.
No, the Riverlands is the name of their.
Oh, yeah, River Run. I do that. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, like the phrase trying to do like a power grab is weird.
Well, and especially talking back to the Lannisters, who are the ones who set them up for all this power in the first place. It's like,
right.
Like these are the people you've aligned with, and like they are your lords, and you are their vassals. Like,
yeah. And I'm really glad they included the bit from the books where they, they were like falsely killing Edmure and like having a noose around his neck and then a knife at his throat. Like that was from the book is when that was failing. Because George has really dry humor.
yeah.
Moving on to what I'm really just extremely excited about and was the big reveal in this episode is that Sandor Clegane, otherwise known as the Hound, is alive and well. The Gravedigger theory is probably true. And wow, there's just so much going on there. He learned, I guess, piousness from someone and then didn't watch them die, but they died and the entire village died while he was off chopping wood. You would have thought he heard people come through and slaughter all those people. What are you, I guess the question is Clegane Bowl hype, or are you just excited to see the Hound back in action?
I'm excited. I mean, the Hound has always been a great character, and Joe is better with him on it. Certainly, Clegane Bowl, while there's still not a clear path to it, it's certainly now much more of a possibility. And I'm just happy to have him back in the show. And I'm happy, in a weird way, to have the Brotherhood without banners back in the show because where that might lead.
Right. Especially with I guess I'm going to say it because most show watchers probably know, the Stoneheart possibility is going to be very interesting, especially bringing Brienne and Pod back into the Riverlands. Yeah. I mean, they're setting it up for it so well. It would be hard for me to not see it happening at this point. Yeah. So I'm more Lady Stoneheart hype than I am Clegane Bull hype.
Yeah, because there's a much more direct path to that, and they laid it out. And we saw one thing that I heard last week that was mentioned is we saw with them bringing back Benjen that maybe this is the season where they're digging up old characters, and Stoneheart is the next logical one.
Preston Jacobs, I think, is who it was, or maybe I was reading on a Song of Ice and Fire's subreddit that George R.R. Martin for this series wanted to do 3 phases of character development. Phase 1 was obviously like all of the Starks being main characters. Phase 2 was adding in like Jaime and Cersei and Brienne, and then I'm guessing Phase 3 would be bringing back characters that we had thought had died. Right. Being Benjen and the Hound, and maybe Quaithe will make an appearance soon, and you know, things will start to make sense.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm guessing we're in phase 3 now, where things are going to move very quickly, um, and really anything is possible because we're out of things to base stuff off of. Like we
Yeah.
kind of
No.
still have some idea, but we're all in it together for once.
Yeah. Which is an interesting feeling. I don't know how show watchers did it, man. This is stressful.
Right. Yeah. Like not knowing from week to week what's going to happen is the most stressful thing that I've ever encountered in like show watching experiences.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the Red Wedding was huge, but we knew about it for a long time. The Purple Wedding was huge, you know, Joffrey's
Right.
assassination, but we knew about it. Um, yeah.
Now, and I mean, given that he's shown no compunction about sending characters in any number of directions, killing them, ruining their lives, whatever, it's, there aren't the same traditional plot arcs where you're like, oh yeah, like I've seen 50 other TV shows, so I know what's going to happen here.
Right. It's just a completely unpredictable situation, and man, am I excited for Winds of Winter after the first 7 episodes of the series or season. Excuse me. Our last show bit before we move on to a quick theory and then a Winds of Winter discussion. Arya, she had a lot going on in the past 2 episodes. She was given a target for the Faceless Men. She then decided not to kill her target because they complimented her eyebrows. And then the waif said that she wanted to kill Arya, and she got pretty damn close to it. And I did not think I was going to ever have to ask this question at all. What are Arya's chances of surviving this season?
Oh, lower than it's ever been in the history of this show.
And I should also clarify that we're talking Arya and not no one for our later topic.
Yeah. I would put it at about 50-50 right now.
Which is just insanely low for a main character of her caliber.
No, her life has never seriously been in danger to this point.
And then she gets stabbed 3 or 4 times in the stomach.
Yeah, and is the one good thing that she has going for is that she's got giant bags of gold, so if she can find a doctor, at least she can pay one.
Right, and she has a way of getting more gold, apparently, because she can steal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the House of Black and White taught her at least that. Yeah. I would probably put Arya at 50-50. I'm going to be a skeptic though, or at least a hopeful skeptic that she's going to make it out of this alive. So I'm going to put her at 51-49. That guy. Just out of God, I hope she doesn't die.
For narrative arc, the story is so much fun if she is alive and on her own and sailing back to Westeros.
Yeah.
I would hope that they wouldn't cripple potential storylines to that degree, but anything can happen.
It's Game of Thrones.
Yep.
That's what I can say. So this is a good transition to get into. Moving on to our theory of the week, which I kind of touched on last time we did one of these, which was after episode 5. But there are a lot of theories surrounding Game of Thrones that people have developed over the years. Some are kind of crackpot, some are really pretty good, and then some are like, okay, are you George? Like, come on. And there are a few of those, and I like to think this is one of the ones where it's "Are you George?" because it's like a giant metaphor. But there's a theory circulating on the A Song of Ice and Fire subreddit that the waif and Arya are the same person, and that Arya is kind of lost in her consciousness, basically. I guess I'm trying to think of what the question would be here. How plausible do you think this is? Um, why do you think it is or isn't plausible? And how pumped would you be if it were true?
So I think it's plausible in a lot of ways. The only thing that gives me pause is maybe the difficulty of communicating it through a visual medium. But like Fight Club did it, why, Mr. Robot did it, like why can't Game of Thrones? But I do think that it has a lot of grounding, that basically she's split now as she starts her training between being a faceless one and, being no one and being observant and all that versus, I mean, she's got a strong personality that's hard to kill. And I do think that she is legitimately torn between which she wants to be. And that this is a good way to visualize that, like we can't get inside someone's head in a visual medium, but this is a good way to show the basic conflict between her strong identity as Arya Stark and her equally strong desire to become faceless.
Yeah, and I think it goes really well with the rest of how her story arc is played out, because she hasn't gone by the name of Arya Stark in a very long time. Basically, ever since she fled King's Landing when her father was killed.
Yeah.
So years of running and being under different names, her psyche is heavily damaged at this point. And she has a very strong personality, is like who she is, because she's a rambunctious little child, but she could be so damaged that it's caused a split in her mind.
Yeah.
And I think the show can do this because every time that I will say it's Jaqen, but I want to call him the kindly man from Dance with Dragons.
Yeah.
Every time Jaqen wants to talk to Arya, he asks the waif to leave the room.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool because it's basically saying he wants to talk to the real Arya and not the one that wants to become no one. And so when he talks to the waif, he's still talking to Arya's body, but it's her split psyche. Right. So I guess it is Fight Club, basically. Which is fantastic because that's an awesome movie that everyone needs to watch if you haven't already. But it's definitely something that people need to be aware of moving forward, so that if it does happen, we all aren't totally destroyed by it happening.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's interesting. Well, and going back to your whole idea of like the damaged psyche and everything, the way they train her in that house isn't helping. I mean, everything's a trial by fire. She's constantly on her toes. She's, she doesn't get minutes to relax. And so any damage that was going on in her mind leading into that, like now she's under extreme stress round the clock, and it's certainly not helping.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of theories that are like working in my mind that could also be at play, but I don't want to get too into them. Like, Arya is a powerful telepath is one of them, but that's kind of tinfoily hat.
Yeah,
I really like it, but we'll not get into that. And then it
certainly has abilities beyond, like, I don't know, like, I mean, all the Starks kind of have a pretty deep connection to their direwolves, and hers happens to still be alive.
Right, and that's one thing that has been touched on, is the ones that have the powerful connection to their direwolves are the ones that lived long enough to have a powerful connection with their direwolves. So like Sansa wouldn't have a connection with Lady because Lady died very early on.
Right.
Nymeria and Arya would have a connection still just because of wolf dreams and whatnot from the book. Obviously, Jon can warg into Ghost in the books. Obviously, Bran can.
Yeah.
We don't know about Robb because we never had a POV chapter with him. And Rickon, I think, is just too young.
Yeah, no. And we didn't have a POV chapter. We don't know. And his wolf also seemed to be the wildest. Like, I think that they just didn't have as good a connection because Rickon was too young to raise a wolf.
I think that Rickon took the personality of his wolf rather than the wolf taking Rickon's personality, because Rickon didn't have an established personality. So he took on like the animalistic personality of the wolf.
That makes sense.
Last topic, very broad, but I want to leave things open. Obviously, a lot has been happening in season 6 that has surprised book readers because it hasn't happened in the book canon. So aside from everything that's already happened in the show, well, actually, let's include everything that's happened in the show. Of the things that have happened in the show that aren't already in the books, which do you think is the most likely? And then of things that can potentially happen in the Winds of Winter, what are you looking forward to the most?
So I'll start with the second question because, like, this is something the shows never had to deal with. But, like, in the books, like, what the hell happens to Tyrion next? Like, in the show, he's latched onto his ruler, he has his influence and everything. But at the end of book 5, he's not attached to anyone.
Right.
And so that's something where the show and the book have to square up somehow, and I have no idea how that's going to happen.
Right, and they merged Tyrion's plotline with Barristan Selmy's plotline.
Right.
So we have no idea what's going to happen with Tyrion in the books. Like, zero.
No clue. And then as far as stuff that happened in the show... Well, and the other thing is, the North situation is going to be a little bit different because just the weddings are different and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that happens in the show that I think is, I think the way things are currently playing out in King's Landing.
Okay.
Is likely to carry into the books.
Okay. And that's very plausible.
Because they're building, the same things are happening in the books and the TV show up to the point where the books stop.
Right.
And nothing in the TV show seems like it's a radical departure from what was happening anyway.
Right. And just knowing how George writes, because I've read a few other short stories and books by him, I think it is very likely that the Faith takes over King's Landing. Like, it's almost 90% likely at this point. Not because George is a religious fanatic or anything. It's actually quite opposite. But he has a fascination with cults, and it can be consider that the Faith Militant is a cult. So that is probably the most likely one. I'm going to go ahead and say something different, that I think that Gravedigger is definitely Sandor Clegane at this point. Like, I don't think it was just David and Dan logging on to the Reddit page and be like, oh, that'd be neat for the show, and then adding it in. I think George definitely had a role in that. So it'll definitely be cool to see the Hound as the Gravedigger. I don't think Clegane Bowl is still going to happen. I think that's probably 30-70 that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I just don't see... Yeah, I don't see the path to it right now, except that they're both still alive.
Right. which is a better possibility of it happening than one of them being dead.
Yes.
And one of them is kind of alive. Not really. Any more thoughts before we close this out? Close out part 2?
Let's see here. Not really. I am sad that one of the book storylines that I kind of got most attached to just doesn't seem to have a role in the show at all.
Oh, which one is?
As far as where Tyrion was last.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I enjoyed that plot line. I thought it was really cool and explained a lot of like Varys' motivations and things like that, because he always says, I served the realm, and like, you don't know what that means. And it kind of becomes clear through that, kind of what he means. And I guess the show addresses it in a different way. But yeah, so that's something that I'm disappointed in. But I'm just really curious to see how much overlap there is between the two.
Okay. Yeah.
Just in general, I mean, because there's some stuff where they have to stick to each other because they kind of have to have a similar ending.
Right.
But there's other stuff where it's like, no, like that's not gonna be in the book. Like that's just not.
Right. I guess my thing is I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen in the next 3 hours of television that we have, because honestly, we should be savoring it. This season has been far and away better than season 5. I can't quite call it my favorite season yet because I loved the end of season 4.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens. And yeah, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, they're building a lot of storylines, and it's just hard to know how they're going to pace each. Like each one isn't going to come to a head at this season,
Right.
but some are, and it's going to be very fascinating. And I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Right. All right. So I think that'll do it. It was nice having you on, Paul. We'll try to get Will on as well next week, and I won't call him Jesse like I did in the last episode. Yeah, that was bad, and I feel bad. So yeah, I actually might do it as a prank, but
you are Jesse now.
Yeah, you are Jesse Eisenberg. You were in Superman. And also Zombieland.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that'll do it for Coddcast episode 2, part 2. Again, sorry about the random technological failures. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.